Hello, welcome to today's no-novelty review, which is on Cyno. A character like Cyno is exactly why I think a no-novelty review is helpful, because now that the novelty has worn off, we can look at things objectively and kind of get a feel about some of the issues that I see being talked about with Cyno. Now I want to preface this by saying, I'm not saying right off the bat Cyno's a bad character. I'm just saying that I feel like the hype overshadowed a lot of the issues that people seem to be talking about now, and why a lot of people who were initially very excited about him, me included, are finding him a little hard to include in their teams or even building teams around him. There's a bunch of issues I want to address in this video about why that is. Of course, we're also going to go over all the other stuff such as builds, constellations, how you play Cyno, who to pair him up with, all that good stuff coming your way in a few seconds after I tell you about my Twitch. Join me on twitch.tv/Meejin, M-E-E-J-I-I-N. You can hang out with us live on stream. You can watch my Cyno tell a dad joke. They're great. Not a lie. Anyway, join us there live if you want, and let's get into today's video. Alright, so who is Cyno? How does he work? Let's talk about it. Cyno is an electro polearm character who deals most of his damage in his burst. He works similarly to characters such as Razor, Zhao, Ito, in that he enters a different state in his ult and then deals elemental damage within that burst. Characters like this, the ones I just mentioned as well as Cyno, cannot be swapped out when they're in their burst because it will cause the burst to end. Almost all of Cyno's damage will be coming from his burst duration, and his burst duration includes his skill. His normal attacks don't matter at all because the normal attack level here is not the same normal attack that you will deal in your burst. That means you could technically leave your normal attacks at like level 1. Okay, so I just want to expand on this point a little because I realized post recording that it is a little confusing and it will come up later in the artifact section. So just to explain a little further, Cyno's attacks in his burst count as normal attacks. However, it is not based on the scaling of your actual normal attack. Cyno's burst has its own multipliers. The reason this is important is because later I will mention 4-piece Glad as an artifact set option, and if you read the 4-piece bonus and you're like, but why would I want to increase his normal attack damage if you're telling me to leave the talent at level 1? It is because his burst attack counts as normal attacks, even though it is not based on the scaling of your actual normal attack. Very confusing. That's why I wanted to expand on it. Back to it. I level -6 because I hate leaving things at level 1. It just seems weird, and I know that thinking that is weird because then I'm just wasting resources leveling something to 6 that doesn't need to be leveled to 6. But what can I tell you? I don't want to leave it at 1, okay? Now his skill and burst kind of work in tandem here, so I'll talk about the burst first. Oh, that kind of rhymed. So basically when you use Cyno's burst, he enters a different form of this full Anubis, and he will deal damage differently than when he is outside of his burst. You'll notice that every so often this little eye will come up on your screen. It's due to this passive talent right here. It'll pop up on your screen purple, and that is when you should be casting your skill, because if you cast your skill within the duration of that purple eye, you'll notice it turns gold, which means you hit it first of all, but it'd also deal a lot more damage than if you're just pressing your skill outside of using that eye timing. So that's why Cyno's gameplay is pretty unique, and you know why a lot of people think it's a lot of fun. Like any timing based thing, it's a little trickier to get down. You'll have to do some practice, get your rotations in order, but it's one of the things that makes him fun, in my opinion. So yes, like I said, the elemental skill here, when you cast it outside of the burst, he just kind of does this little like charge thing. You'll gain some particles doing that, you'll do some damage, but it is much more effective to do it inside the burst, where instead of doing that charged little swirly forward attack, what would you call that? He does this kind of like hit the dance for a claw move. I'm sure I'm putting stuff on the screen. You know what I'm talking about. You're not stupid. So because of that, your priority is obviously going to be leveling your burst, your skill, normal attack. Like I said, leave it if you want to. Now, another thing I want to point out about the burst is this right here. It lasts a maximum of 18 seconds. That's a long burst. I'll discuss this more later in the pros and cons, but just know that you don't have to stay in the burst the whole time. Sometimes it is more efficient to end the burst early to refresh all your supports off-field stuff or maybe heal in order to start the fresh rotation again than it is to stay on the burst the whole time. So his passive right here, as you can see, Paxworm Path clears normal attack damage, which is the thing that he does when he uses his skill outside his burst. It's increased by 150% of his elemental mastery. And the second part is the Duststalker bolt damage from his passive talent, Featherfall Judgment, this one right here, is increased by 250% of his elemental mastery. The Duststalker bolt is the thing that happens when you're in the burst and you skill at the right moment with that eye coming out. You release something called Duststalker bolts. So that damage will be increased of 250% of his elemental mastery. Final thing, Cyno will get 25% more rewards when he's on expedition for 20 hours in Sumeru. All right, let's talk constellations seconds. C1 is an attack speed buff, so this can be obviously great for Cyno, who is doing a lot of attacks in his burst time. Your normal attack speed is going to be increased by 20% for 10 seconds after using your ult. Now that 10 seconds can be extended, as you can see here. You can refresh that if the passive talent Featherfall Judgment is triggered during Secret Rite Cosmic Soulfarer. C2 is probably his most useful constellation. Basically, you'll get an electro damage bonus every time Cyno's normal attack hits an opponent, and as you can see, it has a maximum of 5 stacks, which means you could get an additional 50% electro damage bonus, which is pretty juicy. So if you're going for constellations, C2 is kind of a goal, and then you'll have C1, which is also one of the better constellations, and you can call it a day if you want. C3, talent upgrade. C4 is kind of weird. I don't know, it just reads weird to me. Basically what's gonna happen is every time you trigger, these are reactions here, basically all the electro reactions. When you trigger them, you will restore 3 elemental energy to all nearby party members, except Cyno, which is weird. I don't know, I feel like the emphasis is on the wrong syllable, if you ever heard that fun expression, one of my mom's faves. I mean, basically we'll talk about this later in terms of Cyno's energy, but I feel like him giving energy to other people is kind of like, I would have maybe preferred if he got the energy back himself. So I don't know, C4 is just weird to me. It's not bad, like it's not never bad to get more energy for your other characters, but maybe this would be more going for, in my opinion, if Cyno got the energy back. Because, spoiler alert, he's kind of the one who needs it. C5, talent upgrade. Cyno C6 is basically just kind of a DPS upgrade. Basically, you'll just be doing more electro damage overall, especially because the Duststalker Bolt converts 100% of Cyno's attack to electro damage. So basically just DPS upgrade here. And those are the constellations. All right, so let's get into the build portion, weapons, artifacts, stuff like that. Now, Cyno is actually pretty versatile with how you can build him, which I think kind of contributes to why some people are like a little confused slash maybe underwhelmed. Basically, you're just gonna have to consider what weapon you're running, with what artifacts that you're running, with what main stats on those artifact sets you're running. Obviously, his best in slot's gonna be his weapon, the Staff of the Scarlet Sands. Just note that if you have this weapon, you're gonna want to be running an Elemental Mastery Sand. The reason being is you'll gain a lot of attack boost bonus because, as you can see here, 52% and 28% of your Elemental Mastery will be converted to attack as a bonus. Other weapons, as always, you're gonna have your stat stick weapons, something like Staff of Homa if you want that crit damage, Jade Spear if you have that for the crit rate. Other 5-star weapons are all gonna be fine on him. The one that is really interesting here is the White Tassel. Now, this is a great free-to-play option because you can get it from opening chests. So long as you have not fed it to other weapons, then you will probably have a White Tassel or 2 lying around. At R5, this is excellent because it increases your normal attack damage by 48%, as well as having a crit rate main stat, which is pretty darn good for a 3-star weapon. So this, weirdly enough, is one of Cyno's better options as a weapon, and because this is free-to-play, you'll probably have access to it or come across it at some point in your Genshin journey. If you don't have any of these other stat stick weapons or his main weapon, or even if you have them but you're using them on someone else and you just kind of want to put something on Cyno, this is actually a great option. Now, as for 4 stars, Deathmatch will be good too. Again, you got that stat stick and a nice little passive here. Energy wise, I honestly would not recommend an ER weapon on Cyno, even though we're going to talk about some energy things later. Despite that, I think it is better to run ER based things on maybe some supports instead of Cyno himself. I personally think Cyno himself is going to need more of a crit stat weapon, or maybe something like Calamity Queller, even with that attack. Something like that I think is going to be better than doing an energy recharge weapon. All right, artifacts. There's also a lot you can do here. And again, it is hard to recommend one for all because it's going to depend on what weapon you're running and what substats you have available to you. Up until recently, I was running Gilded on my Cyno. It's viable, you can totally do that, but the DPS ceiling on Gilded Dreams is not as high as Thundering Fury. In theory, in a perfect world, Thundering Fury is going to be best for Cyno. There's a few reasons why. One of them being that you get this extra electro reaction bonus here. Also, when these elemental reactions are triggered, you're going to lower your skill cooldown, which is great for a character like Cyno, who is doing a lot of his skill within the duration of his burst. Because you've reduced the skill cooldown, you can skill more within the duration of a burst, but you still want to make sure you're hitting those eyes. Otherwise, you're not doing nearly as much damage as you can be doing. The problem with missing your eye thing, if you're using the skill at the wrong time, time, not just for thundering, but for any set, is that you've kind of thrown off the whole timing for the rest of the ult. All right, so again, for artifacts, the main subset you're running is kind of gonna vary based on what weapon you end up using. Because I have Cyno's best in slot weapon, it makes sense for me to run an EM Sands because the EM Cyno gets is gonna be converted to attack. You should be aiming for some elemental mastery on your Cyno regardless. Even if you don't end up running a main stat EM Sands, try to get a few EM rolls elsewhere because some of Cyno's damage is gonna be taken from that. Goblet, no question about it, electro damage bonus, you don't need EM here. You could run an EM Circlet. The instances that you would need to do that are a little rare. Probably in 95% of cases, I would recommend a crit damage or crit rate circlet, depending on what you need, but you can run an EM Circlet. Like I said, Gilded Dreams is an option as well. I'll do a showcase showing the difference between Thundering and Gilded. Gilded is absolutely an option. Gladiator is also an option as well. He could get use out of both the 2-piece or the 4-piece. You could do that. He is someone who could also get use out of Thunder Soother. I know we don't talk about that one as much because it's kind of like Lava Walker. Like, who's using that? Cyno could be. And who knows, maybe you have a lot of these lying around and you've got better substats on these than your Thundering. This is something you can use. Finally, your last option is going to be a 2-piece situation. Those 2 pieces could be Emblem, Thundering Fury, Gladiator, even a 2-piece EM like something like Gilded that'll give you a little bit of elemental mastery. You can mix and match based on what you have. Sometimes you don't have everything, so you gotta make do with what you can. So in that case, a 2-piece and 2-piece is totally possible. Thundering Fury is, in theory, the set you can get the most damage from, if everything's perfect and lines up, which as we know, it does not always. All right, let's talk teams. I personally have been loving this team more than anything. This is an Aggravate team. You got 2 other Electro characters to help with the energy as well, and then you have Nahida to proc the Dendro reactions with. Aggravate is definitely one of Cyno's stronger teams and a great option, but there's a lot of other things you could do as well. So in this team, I'm running the Shogun just because of things I'll talk about later in the pros and cons regarding energy. But basically, this could be a flex spot as well. Like you could run an animal character like Kazuha or Sucrose here, or even a Zhongli for that shield. Zhongli's great because his shield has a really high uptime, and because Cyno's burst lasts so long, you'll be shielded for the whole duration. Kazuha or Sucrose is great for an extra EM boost. You can do that too. You could do a full-blown Electro situation. You could flex strongly over here with, again, Kazuha, Sucrose. Fischl is a really great character and a little more energy efficient to run with Cyno. My Fischl's just not built very well. I'll revisit her someday, but not today. For a while, I was trying out this team, the Hyper Bloom team. The problem I found with this team is that I just prefer my other Hyper Bloom team, which is this team right here. I find this Hyper Bloom team is so much stronger than the Cyno team. I just think personally, for me, my Cyno is not shining his brightest in the Hyper Bloom team, so that's why I kind of fell off that one. Not to say this team's not possible, of course it is, for sure. Another option is to do a Quick Bloom team. So the difference between a Quick Bloom and Hyper Bloom team, in case you didn't know, is a Quick Bloom team has a slower Hydro Applier. Slower Hydro Appliers are characters like Barbara, Kokomi, Mona. They all apply Hydro slower than characters, for example, like Xingqiu or Yelan. Those are fast Hydro Appliers, and because of how quickly they apply Hydro, they can proc reactions differently. So that's why this is a Quick Bloom team. Basically, just allows Cyno to do his quicken reactions and stuff like that while still triggering the occasional Hyper Bloom. You could do something like this too, a little bit of Burn, Venti for EM, Nahida for some Dendro reactions. Like, this could work. He's very versatile. Like I said, I prefer him in Aggravate, but you can have fun with him. Put him in a random team like this. You might have fun, who knows? Okay, so let's enter the pros and cons section. What do I like about Cyno? What have I not been liking about Cyno? What do other people seem to not like about Cyno? Because I've heard some talk. Right off the bat, let's start with the pros. Number 1, ears. So cute. That's it. Let's end the video right here. That's all you need to know. No, but seriously, I think he's a unique character, and the biggest pro for me is just his playstyle. It's fun, it's different, it's a little harder to get down, which I like. I like a little bit of a challenge. For me personally, this is kind of all that matters. I'm at the point in the game where I don't need meta characters. I don't need the next strongest team. I can clear the content with what I have. So I'm looking for fun characters to switch it up with. Cyno fits that bill. That's why I pulled for him. That's why I do enjoy him overall. All right, just really quickly, I forgot to mention another pro and reason that I like Cyno, and that is the fact that he is a pretty versatile DPS. He works with quite a few different support characters, some better than others obviously, but he's workable with a lot of them depending on who you have. It differs from, for example, my Ito team, and Ito being the DPS in the team. It feels like I cannot run Ito really outside of that team. That team is Ito's shining star team, and any other team is just not as good. But with Cyno, you can switch up your options. As you can see, they're all workable for sure. And that means you can switch things up when you get bored of one team, which is definitely a pro. It gives him more longevity. And even though I think he's not going to be the new DPS meta, versatility is not something to overlook. It keeps things fresh and can really make him stand out in the long run. But if you are looking for a meta character, Cyno's not it. Like if you're looking to clear Abyss or something, easy peasy with one new character, Cyno's not going to be at the top of my recommendation list. Which unfortunately leads me into the cons, and I know the pros felt really short. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't know what else to say other than if you like the playstyle, that's the pro. That is the pro. Because at the end of the day, Cyno does have some issues. And I've been talking about these issues on stream with some of my chat, just trying to get an idea of like, am I alone? Why do I feel kind of weird about Cyno? Why have I not been wanting to put him in other teams? Why have I not been wanting to bring him to Abyss? Why have I just let him collect some dust for a little bit? And I noticed a lot of people feeling the same way. So why is that? Why has Cyno been kind of weird for a lot of people to use? I've been thinking about it a lot, and I've been sitting on making this video for the exact reason that I'm trying to compile why I think this is. And I'm going to talk about it in the con section. So let's get into that. The first con I'm going to talk about is damage. I don't mean damage in the sense that Cyno does not do good damage, because I think he does. I think the problem a lot of people run into is he does not do good damage easily. Cyno seems like one of those characters that you kind of have to find your right team for, your right build for, in order to get the best out of him. And that takes some time. And I think people's desire for that immediate dopamine hit, big fat PP numbers right off the bat is kind of why people felt disappointed. After testing him a bunch, I can say that I'm not disappointed with his damage. Like, I could go through Abyss right now with my Cyno and be fine. So at the end of the day, it's not the damage that is the issue. I think it's the fact it took me so long to figure out how to get that damage by working with different teams, by trying to figure out the skill timing thing. That's one of the reasons I actually like him. But simultaneously, it is probably the reason he fell out with a lot of people who pulled for him, because he does not feel instantly gratifying. The truth is, he can be a great DPS, he can carry you through if you invest in him for sure, but he's definitely a little harder to work with. And there's a few reasons for that, which leads me into my next con, the energy requirement. I found Cyno's energy so weird, and initially that's why I stopped playing with him, because I just felt like even though I had other Electro characters or someone with a Favonius weapon, it just didn't battery him enough. Like, I felt like my burst was never ready when I was out of it. My mod in chat, Edrag, mentioned to me that he's been using his Shogun with his Cyno, which I didn't think about because my Shogun sits in my closet and collects dust, and I never think about her. But that helped a lot. That's why I've been running her. That has made it so that I can fill the energy requirements I need from my Cyno to get the whole team doing the rotation. But yeah, I don't know, it just took me a minute to figure out what the heck I'm doing with my Cyno in terms of his energy, and now that we've got it, things are fine. But initially, it was kind of like, what do I do with this guy? So one of the main reasons I think Cyno fell out with a lot of people is he was introduced at the wrong time. Cyno came into the game right as Dendro was coming out, and all we really had to work with were the Dendro Travelers. And the Dendro Travelers are not bad, but they're also not Nahida. Now you might be saying, well, this isn't about Cyno then, it's about Nahida and how good she is and not how good Cyno is. But I've said it before and I'll say it again. No man is an island. Every character in this game is going to rely on other characters, and Cyno's one of them. He needs good supports to really shine. Nahida is absolutely unmatched in a Cyno team. Dendro Traveler is just straight up not the same. So because of his introduction before hers, as well as before other Dendro supports, as I'm feeling this, Yao Yao is coming out soon. She will be possibly a Dendro support for Cyno as well. We'll have to test it and see. But there's a lot of characters possibly coming out that are going to be great for him, but he came out before all of them. But all of these factors, I think, played into the fact that Cyno just fell kind of flat for a lot of people because he just didn't have the support he needs. So I wouldn't call this a con per se, because it's just, I think, a timeline thing. And now that we have those characters, that issue has kind of resolved itself and will continue to resolve itself. But I think it's one of the reasons Cyno feels disappointing to a lot of people. If you are one of those people who felt disappointed, I urge you now to revisit your Cyno, especially if you pulled for Nahida. I think you can get more use out of him now that he has kind of more supports to work with. Another con, I think, for Cyno is his burst duration is just so stinking long. It is so long. And because his burst is so long, he requires, again, we go back to the supports, specific supports. For example, Fischl's a good option for Cyno because she is an Electro. They can help battery each other, but her Oz does not last very long on the field. So if you put your Fischl's Oz out and then you're in Cyno, he's gonna be long gone by the time your Cyno's burst is up. So you kind of need characters that have really, really long off-field bursts. And that can be tough depending on what kind of team you're building. Again, that leads plays back into Cyno being kind of here at the wrong time. In the future, we might have the perfect Cyno support, and we just don't know it yet. That's just one of the cons. You need good off-field sub-DPS/support characters with long durations on their skills, their bursts, whatever, in order to get the best out of your Cyno. Basically, in conclusion, I think a lot of Cyno's cons come from weird timing combined with not having necessarily the best teams available to him yet. And because of that, he's fallen off a lot of people's radar. And I think that is why a lot of people feel maybe disappointed or regret for pulling for him. I just really wanted to dig into that because initially, I think on the surface, a lot of people's thoughts is he's not doing as much damage as I feel like he should be able to do. But the truth is, I have a lot of characters that I use as DPS that don't do even as much damage as Cyno, yet I'm not disappointed with them. So the issue has to be deeper. In the end, like I said, really all that matters is you like his playstyle. But if you're fearful to pull for him because you've been hearing like maybe some negative talk about I'm disappointed with Cyno, just know that it just maybe will take more time, investment, and trying it out to figure out what works best for your Cyno. At the end of the day, he is fun to play. He just needs a little more attention, a little more thought. So it's just something to consider if you're wanting to pull for him. Okay, so let's get into a quick Cyno showcase. I'm gonna go into Abyss and we'll just beat stuff up there. It's gonna be great. Hello, this is Disembodied Voice Meej coming to you from my house. So I'm gonna get into the Cyno showcase. I'm gonna do something a little bit differently with this showcase because, like I said earlier, we can run so many different sets on Cyno. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to floor 12 of the Abyss and we're going to do chamber 1 and I'm just going to show you the comparison. Team is going to stay the same. We're going to do Cyno, Kuki, Shogun, and Nahida, and the only variable will be the artifacts. I'm going to assume they're all going to be pretty close, especially if you're not really strapped for time in Abyss, but I assume that this is going to look fairly similar between each set. Just a note that all the main stats of my sets are going to stay the same: Elemental Mastery Sands, Electro Damage Bonus Goblets, and a Crit Damage Circlet. So let's start off with Thundering Fury here. We got 287 Elemental Mastery, 81.8% crit rate, 224.4% crit damage, and 125.9% energy recharge. All the energy recharge on all my sets is going to be very low because I'm going to run Cyno with Kuki Shinobu and the Raiden Shogun. So he will be batteried enough through those two. If you're running Cyno as your sole Electro unit, you will need a lot more energy recharge. A lot more. Like maybe even close to 200%. Man, I'm going to switch up all these sets. It's going to be so annoying. Ugh. Players, can we please get an artifact saving system? Okay, so here's what I'm going to do so that we can get a better idea of how each set works. I'm not going to hurt Uncle Ray so much at the beginning, and instead I'll let him get through that phase where he puts all his little friends on the ground, and then I'll try to do as much damage as possible when he's in that disarmed phase, because that way we can get a really accurate read of how much damage we do without the variable of him moving around or, you know, getting out of my way, basically. So a quick note with Thundering while I'm waiting for Uncle Ray to calm the heck down. Usually I like to skill before I go into my burst because by the time I'm in my burst, the passive on the Thundering Fury makes it so that my cooldown is ready again as soon as I'm in my burst. I think it's worth noting that it's kind of worth it to do it usually on Thundering Fury. Alright, so that's where we got with the Thundering Fury. Okay, so here are my stats with the Gilded Dream set: 313 Elemental Mastery, 79% crit rate, 204.2% crit damage, and 116.2 energy recharge. Okay, and here's where we ended up with the Gilded Dreams. Okay, final set, Gladiators Finale. We are running 294 Elemental Mastery, 89.9 crit rate, 205% crit damage, and 106.5 energy recharge. Crit rate's high. I'd prefer some more crit damage, but you know, it's the way the artifacts roll. Alright, let's try out the Glad set. Alright, that's what we got with Glad. Okay, so I just did all the testing and I'm looking up close at the damage we did to Uncle Ray, and I thought it would be close, but I didn't realize how close it would be. Like, it's kind of ridiculous how almost exactly the same these look. In fact, Glad actually looks like it did slightly better than both my Gilded and my Thundering, which is weird because you could argue I have better Thundering than both other sets. I have a nice crit ratio, more crit damage overall, more energy recharge, so like, what the heck? I'm actually gonna put this into Photoshop and do a little opacity layer to see which one actually comes out on top, but it just goes to show you that it's so close. It really just matters what substats you have, what artifacts your other characters are running, and kind of what you can give to Cyno. As you can see, he works well with all of these sets, so just pick whatever you have available to you. Theory crafting is fun, but in practice, like, look how close it is. Come on. So that's gonna do it for today's video. Let me know your thoughts on Cyno. I know a lot of people felt disappointed, but hopefully after watching this, maybe you'll try him again. Because if you thought he was fun, then that is the root of why you could enjoy him. Maybe what really just needs to be finessed is his set, his teammates, stuff like that. I will admit that I was definitely benching my Cyno for a bit because I was feeling that same, I don't know what to do with this guy kind of a thing. But since I've been preparing for this review and kind of going back to him and seeing what works and what doesn't, I can comfortably say that I've been enjoying him a lot more. His playstyle is very much something you have to get used to and accept that you will be on Cyno for like most of your rotation. I like that playstyle. If you don't, I would not recommend pulling for Cyno. He's very selfish on the field. But if you like his playstyle, if you like him, if you want to pull for him, do not let the naysayers dissuade you. He's still a good character. He's definitely capable. He just needs a little tender love and care. But that's gonna do it for today's video. Don't forget to join me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Meejin, M-E-E-J-I-I-N, and show me your Cynos. Show him some love. Show me some love if you want. Thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye! Someone is thumping and bumping over there. I don't know if you can hear that.